My arrogant boss bullied me at work despite my successes, and now her personal life and career are falling apart. This happened about 5 years ago when I worked at a prop trading company. This company was multinational and had opened a new office in my city a couple of years before I joined. For those unaware, most prop trading firms are known for insane turnover. They hire people en masse and keep only those who can prove themselves. The company I worked for hired new people every 3 months. The office had space for about 120 traders, but was never fully staffed. Out of roughly 20 new hires each quarter, only 5 would pass the 3-month internship, and of those, only one, or sometimes none, would make it through the 3-month probationary period. The company had been operating in my city for 2 years before I joined, and at that point I could only name 4 permanent employees. The other roughly 10 people were either interns or on probation. I was hired along with about 25 others straight out of university. The internship paid well for a first job, about twice the starting salary at other financial institutions, plus bonuses once you moved to regular trading, whether you were an intern, on probation, or a permanent employee. I was thrilled. I first met my future boss, a respectable Indian man, at a career day at our university where they conducted IQ testing. Our office, like other mid-sized firms, had a flat management structure, traders at the bottom, an HR or operations manager above us, and an office manager at the top. The boss would let you leave work whenever you asked, as long as your daily goals were met. That was his policy. However, the HR or operations manager was his complete opposite, and worse. This woman was a top-tier jerk, and I say that sincerely. Let's call her Gabby. I first saw Gabby when I came to their office for my final interview. I was checking in at the front desk when she stormed out of her office and demanded some documents from the receptionist. The receptionist wanted to finish with me first, but Gabby urgently sent her to the archives. Our conversation went like this. Gabby, you one of the newbies? Me. Yes, I'm really excited. Gabby, don't get too excited. I don't think you'll make it. Me. Why? Gabby, you're too soft. Pause. I could put in a good word for you if you give me something. Hinting at a bribe. Me. Haha, very funny. Gabby, I'm serious. Give me something and it'll be easy. Don't, and I'll make sure you don't even get to the interview. Me. No, Gabby. Stupid idiot. Right to my face. And she kept her word. She stuck me in a corner of the waiting area where I was barely visible, but I could hear everything at the front desk. The only reason I got to the interview was because I must have impressed the boss during our earlier meeting at the university. He personally came out of his office to ask why my resume wasn't there. Gabby claimed I hadn't submitted it. The receptionist said she'd seen it somewhere, and at that moment I approached the desk just as she said, Here it is, it was in the trash. Everyone stared at Gabby. From that humiliating moment, Gabby developed an intense hatred for me. Gabby was a micromanager, no, a nano-manager. She made us request access to every website except those on her approved list, which was laughably useless for traders who need information from everywhere. She scheduled meetings at the worst possible times, but only when the office manager wasn't around, so you couldn't leave to check your positions. She had this idiotic habit of stealing my lunch, and when I confronted her about it, she basically told me to screw off. I could deal with that. I started bringing 2 lunches and kept doing what I loved. Gabby was married with 2 kids and was fairly attractive. I think she enjoyed the attention because men were practically lining up for her. They'd pick her up from the office for 2-hour lunches and in the evenings too, except on Thursdays. On Thursdays, her husband would pick her up with the kids, probably for a family dinner or something. About 2 months after I started, our boss left the office. Apparently, he went to India to get married or something like that, but he stayed with the company. I wished him the best. None of the other permanent traders had the minimum 5 years of experience required for a managerial role, so they had to look for someone external. In the meantime, Gabby became the de facto head of the branch, despite her knowledge of futures markets being, to put it kindly, at a first grader's level. Her first mistake was delaying my promotion from intern to probationary status. I was an excellent trader, easily in the top 5 of our group of 26. She promoted the 20 people she liked, kept me and another guy as interns, and fired 4 others. Around the same time, a new batch of about 20 interns arrived. I realized this was her revenge. I was surprised she held a grudge for so long. It was weird. The last decision my former boss made before leaving was to move me from a simulator to a real trading account, but I didn't make a fuss. I kept learning, often asking for advice from my former boss and the permanent traders. 3 months later, at the next evaluation, I was shocked. They didn't promote me again. even though all the new interns from the second wave had moved to probationary status. I was the best among them and the only one trading real money. I knew I was doing well. The permanent traders acknowledged it, and my first group often came to me for advice. To their credit, some of them were good, but most were still on simulators. By the rules, you couldn't move to probationary status if you were still on a simulator, but you could start trading real money as an intern if you were good enough, which I was. So I was trading live, making decent money, yet still an intern, and ignored twice. I couldn't accept it. I decided to confront Gabby directly. I spoke to the senior traders, laid out my case without badmouthing her, and they agreed to help. About a month later, she finally promoted me to probationary status. At the time, she wasn't confident in her authority and was wary of the permanent traders. Those guys were like gods. 2 months after my promotion, there was another evaluation and a new batch of hires. I wasn't promoted again. My first group had become permanent employees, though only 2 were actually trading. My probationary group all moved to permanent status. The group behind me moved to probationary, and new interns were hired. I tried not to dwell on it, hoping Gabby's hostility had faded, but it hadn't. 3 more months passed. I kept trading live and loving it, though still on probation. At the next evaluation, I was passed over again, despite my results being nearly on par with the permanent traders, contract after contract. The group that joined me on probation was fully promoted to permanent status. None of them were trading live. The group behind them caught up to me, and a new batch of interns was hired. I couldn't swallow it anymore. I went to the 4 permanent traders I was close with, and we decided to try the same approach as before. But this time, it didn't work. Gabby was drunk on her sadistic power and flat out refused to consider my promotion, even when shown evidence of my performance. Her argument was basically, I'm in charge, so I can do what I want. I wasn't going to take it. I contacted my former boss, who was now head of operations for Africa. He was genuinely shocked to learn I was still on probation with my results. An order came from above to promote me. When Gabby handed me the promotion letter, her face looked like someone had shoved 6 pineapples up her butt. I thought that was the end of it. How wrong I was. At the next hiring round, she brought in a girl. Let's call her Sue. Sue was smart in every way, but lacked the emotional intelligence to handle the market. In trading, as I was taught, you need 2 things, IQ and EQ. You can't improve IQ, but you can work on EQ to handle the stress that comes with the job. Sue had the IQ, but struggled with EQ, which wasn't a deal breaker. It could be worked on. Quick recap. The office now had about 70 employees, over 30 of whom were permanent, including me, but only 11 were trading live. About 20 were on probation and none of the interns were trading live. For the office to survive, it had to stay profitable, meaning the 14 live traders were covering salaries, rent, supplies, health insurance, pensions, and more for everyone else. As I later learned from my former boss, the corporation wasn't seeing much profit from our branch and was considering closing it, which would have meant job losses for all of us. But I digress. Top-tier jerk Gabby used Sue's desperation and tears to try to accuse me of sexual harassment. Here's how it went down. Remember all those people still on simulators? They came to us 11 live traders for trading advice, and we tried to help. We split the 7 traders into groups, and I mentored about 4, including Sue. Any trader will tell you that before you start making money, you'll hit a losing streak, unless you're a genius, and it's always stressful and scary. High EQ is essential to get through it. One evening, Sue was having a rough time. We were reviewing her trades on a bad day for everyone when she broke down crying. I knew how that felt. I'd cried myself, so I tried to comfort her, awkwardly holding her hand and patting her back. I'm still terrible at consoling people. I didn't know Gabby saw it all. The next day, as I later learned, Gabby approached Sue and made her an offer. Sue would keep her job and get a ton of money if she said I was harassing her. Sue agreed, and a nightmare began. It started with an official reprimand from the corporate office, and a hearing I wasn't invited to because Gabby forgot to notify me. Apparently, she was actively pushing for my firing. The only thing that saved me was my former boss's intervention. Despite his support, I lost my quarterly bonus and was forced to attend seminars, which were essentially watching the same 3-hour sexual harassment video until I signed a paper admitting guilt, which would go on my record. I knew if I signed, Gabby would have everything she needed to ruin my life. So I showed up at the office at 7 a.m., watched the damn 3-hour video until 10 a.m., refused to admit guilt, worked, and left at 11:20 p.m. every day for nearly 7 months. It was exhausting torture, and Gabby never let me forget it. Everyone I was mentoring was reassigned the day after the reprimand. 2 days later, Gabby sent me a letter saying my contract limit was cut from 1,000 to 20. She didn't realize that if you start something, you need to finish it. I began documenting everything happening to me in the office. I noticed that when I went to lunch, someone was opening my drawer and rummaging through my notebook where I wrote my daily trading ideas. The only person with a key besides me was Gabby. She was studying my lunch habits and schedule down to the minute, opening my drawer when I left, copying my trading plans, and giving them to Sue. I caught them doing it once but let it continue to establish a pattern through Sue's trades. Then I approached two permanent traders I was closest with and shared my plan. Remember how I said almost no money from us reached the corporate office, and only 11 of us were trading live? Things got worse. The office was packed, but even fewer people were trading live. You could only start real trading with the approval of the head of operations, my former boss, and the selection was strict. Imagine my earning capacity being cut by 90%. My two friends agreed to my plan and reduced their trading volume by about 50%. This nearly pushed the branch into the red, and 3 weeks later we were notified that the head of operations and other bosses were coming to visit. The next step was to apply pressure. I showed Gabby I could prove she was stealing my work, and I got a written statement from her admitting she fabricated the harassment claim. Now, I was going to ruin her marriage. A little digging revealed that all those men picking her up from the office were her lovers. She'd go on 2-hour lunches with her phone off. I took advantage of one such moment, sneaked into her office, and found her Facebook profile open. She was always on it, which was especially infuriating since us lowly employees were banned from using the internet. I checked her messages and there it was. Intimate chats, nudes, complaints about her husband's shortcomings, and details of affairs with about 6 men. I copied everything to her personal email, which was also logged in, sent it to myself, and deleted the email from her sent folder. Now I had everything I needed on my phone. I decided to go further and hit her relationship with her kids. I'm not proud of this step, but just sending it to her husband wasn't enough for full satisfaction. So I waited for Thursday, when her husband usually picked her up with the kids. The stars aligned because that day coincided with the corporate boss's visit. On Thursday, I came to the office at 7 a.m., armed with all my documentation, from my hiring letter to dozens of rejected promotion requests. I sat through the 3-hour harassment video. Yes, I was still required to do it, and waited for my moment. The corporate bosses, including my former boss, arrived and went straight to a meeting with Gabby. I was sure they'd call me to ask why I'd been attending harassment seminars for almost a year. I was ready. They called me after lunch. The question was asked, and before I could answer, Gabby jumped in, as I expected, with a long tirade about my disobedience and harassing female employees. Her smirk made it clear she thought she'd won. Then I pulled out Sue's letter and her smile vanished. They called Sue in, and she confirmed my story, saying she regretted it. They fired her on the spot and told her to wait at the front desk for her final paycheck. I felt no pity. Then I presented an analysis of my trades and explained how Gabby was going through my drawer and passing my notes to Sue. Gabby denied everything, and Sue called back in, denied it too. My former boss accessed the system, pulled Sue's and my trade data, compared it to my notes, and confirmed everything. Sue was fired again. They promised to restore my withheld bonus and payment, plus an extra $50,000. That worked for me. Justice was served. Then I saw Gabby's husband walk into the office with their 2 kids. I pulled out my phone, looked at her, and said with a smile, "Your husband's here." She turned, saw him, apologized, and went to ask him to wait. My former boss said, "Of course." I hit send. What happened next? Her husband lost it. Her office was glass, and the rest of the office was an open space, so we all heard their screaming match. He left with the kids. Sorry, little ones. Gabby followed, still yelling. Then she saw us all standing and watching, and the look on her face was priceless. She was clearly trying to figure out what part of her crumbling life she could still save. She let her husband leave, but within an hour, she was fired. My favorite boss stayed on because there was no one else to replace Gabby. He worked for another month, training the longest-serving woman in the company to take his place as manager. She was probably the most brilliant person I've ever met. Unfortunately, the branch still struggled due to the large number of non-revenue-generating employees and was eventually closed. But all the productive employees were transferred to other branches, 2 in London and 9 in India. So I don't think anyone lost their job undeservedly. I still occasionally check Gabby's Facebook page. Lately, it's full of posts like, "I'm single because I'm too awesome." Sometimes I almost feel sorry for her, but then I remember that 3-hour video and my head clears. Sue bounced around different firms before landing a job as a research analyst. My favorite boss still works at the same company, and we occasionally keep in touch. I took a break from trading after all that crap. I needed to recover. I didn't take their offer to move to India and instead joined a friend's consulting firm. When I'm ready, I'll return to the market. There's no other job as challenging and rewarding for me.